Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Ask robtrek, where I try to answer your questions from the comment sections of my videos. And if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them down in the comments below this video, and I'll do my best to answer them as soon as I can. And for all of you watching, if you find these videos helpful, please consider buying me a coffee or making a small donation in the links below. They are greatly appreciated, and they help me to continue making videos to help all of us. All right, the first question here is from TT Birds, and he says, hi, can you explain why EM5 Mark III SAF is less accurate than CAF for a single shot photo? I was getting slightly out of focus shots with SAF, so I ended up just tapping CAF quickly instead. So I'm not sure I quite understand by what you mean when you say you're just tapping CAF, because you have to choose your focusing mode, SAF or CAF. You can't just be like an SAF then tap for CAF that I'm aware of. But that said, I can give you a couple of tips to help you with your SAF autofocusing and also your CAF, because the principles apply to both. All right, here on my M5 Mark III, let's go into the menu. Let's go down to the custom menu, and we can confirm I'm an SAF. The AF scanner default mode is set to mode 2. And all this does is, if the camera doesn't acquire focus like almost instantly, what it's going to do is scan for focus points from the minimum focusing point of the lens to the maximum focusing point. So mode 2 is a good setting. It'll do this once. If it doesn't acquire focus, you'll have to tap the shutter button again, or the back button focus, whatever you have programmed, and to try to refocus. Or you can set it to mode 3, where if you hold the autofocus back button focus, or you half press the shutter button halfway and hold it, it'll try 2 or 3 times to find focus by scanning from minimum focusing distance to maximum focusing distance, and then eventually it'll stop. But mode 2 is usually good enough. Now let's go into the capture menu, or C1. I like to think of it as how you capture things. And we want to go and look at these first 2 settings here. For SAF, we have the release priority set to off, and that's what you want. And then I also like to do this for CAF as well. And basically what this does is the camera will not take a picture unless it thinks it has focus. So it's possible maybe you had this set to on, where the camera will take a picture as soon as you push the shutter button all the way, regardless if it has focus or not. And I'll demonstrate that. So we'll turn both of these off. All right, so here's a live view on my camera. I'm in program mode, and we'll go into super control panel and just confirm SAF, and I turn off face detect because I'm not taking pictures of people. And what I can do is just half press the shutter button to focus back here, or half press and focus here, like so. And what I'll do is I'll focus back here first, and then now I'm just going to do a full press on the shutter button very quickly. And what the camera does is it locks focus before it takes the picture, because we have the release priority set to off. Now let me show you what happens when I set the release priority to on. Like this. So I'll focus back here, and then I'll just quickly take a picture here. And you can see it's out of focus here because the camera put priority on capturing the image versus focusing on the image or on the subject. So let me go ahead and turn this back on, and we'll do this one more time. So I'll focus back here, then quickly take a picture here. So if I punch in, you can see I've acquired focus versus the previous image is out of focus. Now the same thing applies to SAF, or I'm sorry, CAF. So we'll change this to CAF. And if I just point up here, half press to lock focus, let's go back here and do a quick shutter release. And you can see it acquired focus versus if I turn this on, which is actually the default setting. Let me half press to get a focus up here, and then do a quick shutter release here. And this time you can see It almost got there. It almost got there, but it still did not get focus. If we look at the previous image, you can see it's much sharper. All right, and then a couple more tips is, personally, I like to shoot in CAF mode with the release priority set to off, because in SAF mode, a lot of times, you might focus and recompose, or you might half press and focus, and before you take the picture, any slight movement by you or the subject will end up with your picture being out of focus. But in CAF mode, you can half press to acquire focus if you want, or you can just full press right away and take the picture, and the camera will not take the picture until it thinks it has focus. So you should get a much higher hit rate in CAF mode with release priority set to off. And like I said, the mode scanner, mode 2 is just fine. Mode 3 works as well too if you need the camera to work harder at it, meaning it'll try a couple more times instead of just once to acquire focus if there's low contrast in the scene. And one more tip, and this is typical of sports action wildlife photography, where you're shooting in a continuous high-speed shutter, say 25, 50 frames per second, whatever your camera is capable of, and in continuous autofocus. A lot of photographers like to turn the CAF release priority to on. And that's because while they're tracking a subject and firing off their 25 frames per second, they don't want the camera to hesitate and not capture an image because it thinks it doesn't have focus and miss that decisive moment of, say, that perfect position of where the bird's wings are in flight. And a lot of times, when you're shooting at subjects at distance, right, in wildlife photography, for example, your depth of field is wide enough to sort of mitigate any focus precision you might need otherwise. So keep that in mind, and you may want to practice with CAF release priority on and CAF release priority off in those kinds of situations and see what works better for you. Okay, the next question here is from Carlos Hirdiro. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, but it says, I don't know why, but my OM-1 has turned off the auto recording and I don't know how to turn it back on. Okay, so there are a couple of audio settings that may be causing your auto recording to be turned off. So I'll show you what those are. All right, let's go into the menu. And let's go over to the movie menu, and we're going to scroll over here to page 5, sound recording connections. Now, when you're talking about the internal microphones on the camera, they are basically always on. So what you need to check for is click OK, go into recording volume, and then built-in mic, and make sure that this is, set to a level that can pick up the audio in the room. Usually 0 is fine. A lot of times I find myself I have to turn it down. And you want the audio levels to be just touching the red, generally speaking. But this is the only setting. If it's all the way down to -10, they're still on, but it may not be picking up all the audio. Now, when we're talking about external microphones that you would plug into the 3.5mm jack on your camera, you can have like these lavalier microphones. Maybe you have one of these boom mics that go on top of your camera, or maybe you're using a wireless microphone setup. Now, when you're using lav microphones and a lot of times boom microphones that you use on top of your camera, you have to change another setting in the menu. So let's go back into the menu and go into sound recordings again. And we want to make sure that the plug-in power is turned on whenever you're using the 3.5mm jack, with a couple of exceptions. So I'm going to turn this off for now and just plug in a simple lav mic like so. And you can see that the audio levels are not bouncing at all. And when I unplug this, we go back to the internal microphones. You can see the audio levels. I plug this in and the audio turns off. So you have to go into the menu, sound recording settings, and turn the plug-in power on. And now the audio levels are being recorded off the lav mic. So if your microphone is a condenser type microphone, they always require power, particularly the lav mics and a lot of the boom mics. Now, some boom mics have their own internal power and they'll work whether the power is turned on or off in the camera, but a lot of times it has to be on. However, with wireless microphone setups, a lot of times you can turn that power off in the camera. But you'll have to see what works with your wireless microphone setup. All right, and the last question here is from Mark Baumgartner, and he says, "Hey Rob, I'm trying to find a setting on my OM-1 to display my shot immediately on the monitor when I take a pic and just lower the camera and view it quickly on the back. Is there a way to do this and set the display time? I have to admit the manual is frustrating." Okay, yes, there's a very easy way to do this. All you have to do is go into the menu, and then go over to the shooting menu 1 or basic settings here, and then down here you'll see image review. By default, I believe it's turned off, but you can turn this on, and 0.3 seconds displays the image for 0.3 seconds after you take the picture, then goes back to live view. And you can set this as high as 20 seconds, it looks like. Yeah, is the maximum. So let's do a 3-second delay. All right, so let's take a picture of this lens cap, and now it's displaying the image for about 3 seconds, then it goes back to live view. So let me take a picture over here, and it's displaying the image for 3 seconds, then it goes back to live view. Now there's one other setting that I like to use, and that is the auto setting. So let's go into the menu, back to image review, and let's change this to auto. So this puts the camera actually into your playback mode, the same thing as pushing the playback button here. So if I take a picture of my camera over there, now the camera's playing in playback mode. So I can actually zoom in on the image to check focus while it's in this mode. And then to start taking pictures again, I just tap the shutter button, and now I'm back in live view mode. So this is actually the mode that I use the most, is auto mode, because after I take a picture, I like to kind of zoom in and make sure I got focus right away, rather than the other way. I would have to push the play button, find the image and then scroll in. And I'll just add, on the older Olympus menu, it's actually called something a little different, and it's in the wrench menu here. It's called the rec view, and you can say I have it on auto, but here you can set the same timings, 10 seconds, 3 seconds, etc. All right, and that's all I have for today. And if you have any more questions, please feel free to leave them down in the comments below. And remember, there's no question too small. I'm always happy to help. And if you find these videos helpful, please consider buying me a coffee or leaving a donation in the links below. They are greatly appreciated. And until then, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.